Right, can you hear me, Lena?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, right, okay. One of the things I want to share with everybody tonight is the sort of experiences that I've had as a teacher, and also through life, the hard knocks route of being a mum, and more recently granny and aunt of youngsters with neurodiversity. One of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is remembering that youngsters don't just come pre-packed, ready to join us in primary one. They have had 5 years on this planet, and my goodness, they've learned so much from their parents and carers. So the development of neurodiversity comes long before they come to us in our primary one classrooms. But what I do want to share with you is, because I'm old and I've got hindsight now, I want to share with you some of the preschool indicators that I experienced with my children growing up. So this is my first child, not literally, that's not her on the changing mat, but what I want to share with you was that when I was changing her, every time I picked her up, her little arms would go out, stretched out, and was screaming because she was terrified as I lifted her up from the mat. And this child, who's now an adult, she went on to develop fears of climbing frames, chutes, and swings. And now that adult is frightened to go in escalators. So there's a body in space issue that seems to be rooted in babyhood. The other thing I wanted to share with you tonight was that my family, and including me as an auntie, we've had a wide range of development of talking, from early talkers at the age of 18 months, talking in complex sentences, to single words by the age of 2. And my nephew, who's age 35 now, has got no language at all and is autistic. One of the things I learned from my autistic nephew, and this was an interesting one, at the age of 2, he'd come to visit us, and he couldn't see the difference between our garden path and the garden. He would walk straight across the grass, through the flowers and the rockery stones, as if he just didn't see the edges at all. The other thing that I learned from my grandson was the sensory integration issues. As you can see, it's been a huge learning curve for me. My grandchild in his preschool years became very distressed with the feel of his socks and his shoes and clothing labels. He also really became distressed with loud noises. Now you'll be thinking, well, why have you put an office desk there? Well, this is my grandson's office desk at the age of 4, and he became really distressed because if somebody moved anything, and he was so anxious about anything being moved, he insisted his mum took a photograph on her phone of how he'd left it to make sure he was going back to exactly the same way. So how do these translate into the classroom then, these preschool indicators? Well, obviously from the label point of view, you've got wearing school uniform and also having to change it to different clothing. So you've got the socks and the shoes issue coming in there. And then you've got the noises, the school bell ringing, and the noisy classrooms. As soon as children are active, there's noise. And then that youngster that was talking in sentences by 18 months, there were the unrealistic expectations of that youngster because they expected a very high level from her. But that youngster ended up dyslexic and couldn't read or write by the age of 8. The changes in routines really flummoxes them. Class layout, if it's changed, can really throw them, and also a change in a class teacher. So, to this background of anxiety, school then presents youngsters with the following challenges. So, got all of that in the background, mixing and sharing with a wide variety of children, not only in the class, but outside in the playground too. And then we expect them to understand and remember instructions. And then they've got to talk, we invite them to talk out in front of a group or a class. And then they've got to run around a noisy gym hall. We all know what the echoes are like in a noisy gym hall. And then we expect them to learn to read and write magically. And not only learning to read and write, but we expect them to be able to count, actually know number facts, but not only know them, they've got to be able to manipulate these facts in their heads so they can use that to work out other mathematical sentences. So progressing through school, more and more indicators become apparent. So you've got the anxieties coming through, often in the form of chewing cuffs, their sweatshirts, losing things, always losing things. Sometimes it's their school top, maybe a shoe, their pencil, their reading book. They forget instructions very, very quickly. It can also be slow to complete work. And then trying to write within lines and in jotters with squares. And then we've got to expect them to be able to hear all the sounds in the words. And then they've got to blend them. I call that gluing the sounds together. Okay, so what does an inclusive classroom look like? Well, in the primary school setting, we really try hard to provide a daily visual timetable so that children don't have anything unexpected happening to them. They can see from that visual timetable what's going to happen now and what's going to happen next. They have everything they need beside them. So there's no need to go looking for anything. The school that I work in has a superb system where they have little zipped wallets and everything they need is in their little zipped wallet right beside them. And we have youngsters who do need ear defenders. Every table has a box of ear defenders for anybody who wishes to wear them. So again, access for everybody. And this is something that's become more apparent in recent years, is the real importance of calm colours on walls. We've come to understand that these sensory integration issues, if you've got wild, really strong colours, can actually really disturb thinking thoughts and make them very anxious. And one other thing that I really want to flag up is please get your flickering classroom lights fixed. I know that's a big ask with reduced janitor time, but classroom flickering lights can really cause a lot of anxiety in youngsters. And then just knowing where things are, everything should have a home and should know exactly where to find things. So that is the basis of an inclusive classroom. Now I want to share with you, some of you know me, so you'll know that I do voluntary tutoring for Dyslexia Scotland. And this is one of my youngsters who got hugely frustrated with his writing. And I'm sure you can see why he would get frustrated with it. He put so much thinking in it, and he's got his capital letters and his full stops in there, but he couldn't read it back. He hadn't a Scooby what he'd written when he tried to read it back to me. So here are some possible solutions, not only as a teacher, but as a parent or carer. You can scribe for him. Now, if this is homework, I really ask you to think about doing the writing for them, right through secondary as well. It's amazing what the scribing actually makes you aware of their thinking. It can actually show that they're functioning at a far higher level than their writing would suggest. The other thing that is an option is that people can type their own words, their own work if they want. And the other option is, we know through our iPads, speech to text is an option. But I do know a lot of my youngsters that I work with, both through support for learning and tutoring, is many of them have speech difficulties, and therefore speech to text is not always an answer because the iPad and other devices are just not picking up what they're wanting to see. So what's the teaching input? If you're presented with that piece of writing that's hard to decode, it's actually not that bad, because you can actually see where there are letters that are recognisable, and very quickly you can use these as clues to what the youngster was trying to say. So my next slide shows you how I decode youngsters' work. So the top left you can see is the youngster's attempt at his words or her words, and then what the actual word was. And then I like to unpack the difficulty. What is it that caused that error? So if you look at practice, they didn't hear the C, the K, practice. And there's many ways that we can be dealing with it, but you can use bricks literally that you physically join together. And I always like to play the game of, can you see another word inside it? So you've got the word ice. Now, the two highlighted ones I want to speak about specifically in that one piece of writing, this youngster had 2 attempts at writing the same word. He was talking about an animal, and he wanted to write the word dribble. So you can see within that one piece of writing, driddle and bridley was his attempt at dribble. So very clear you've got the BV reversals issue, but you've also got an LE ending issue. Now, one of the things that I've learned through Nessie, which is an online program that works for some youngsters, is they do fantastic strategy videos, cartoony song types, and it really helps them. And it also has artwork that you can develop, like the dog's got a tail. So it's the dog's head, then his tail, and the bat, then the ball for the bee. If we then go down to the other highlighted one, UST. Now the youngster wanted to use that as asked. Now, wherever you're sitting, I just want you to see what he's written, asked. Now it's pretty close to asked. He's got that T ending at the end. Asked. I asked him to do that. So I then realized that's how he says it, just how it is. So one of the things that I've learned over the years is to actually use phonic fingers. So you're putting your hand up, and for every sound you're hearing in your word, your finger is being touched. So we would touch a finger, k, which I call as the root word. And then from the root word, you then look at ED endings. So I just wanted to share that with you. We will be sending this out as examples of possible ways of supporting people. So the next stage I want to share with you is mathematical issues. Challenges when measuring. First of all, really need to make sure you give them the right tools. This task was just pure perimeter, and perimeter is all about just adding each section, 6, add 3, add 6, add 3. A lot of we teachers fall into the trap assuming that sub-skills are already in place. Now, what does that mean? So sub-skills are actually being able to read the intervals on the ruler. And when my eldest daughter, looked at this slide with me, she says, but wait a minute, Mum, it's much more than that. She says, it's not just about reading the intervals, it's knowing, are we talking millimeters here, or are we talking centimeters, or are we talking inches? So here's our first ruler, and here's our second ruler. And the reason I had put this slide up is because the wooden ruler starts bang on the beginning of measuring. There's no indent. So measuring, in theory, is easier using that ruler. And if you look at the purple ruler, the 0 is indented by at least 5 millimeters. So youngsters don't realize that, and they can actually mismeasure, assuming that the edge of the ruler is the beginning. So we assume so much, we think that all these sub-skills are in place. So I want to share with you why we need to really be thinking this. Another mistake I made, and I'm really keen that you know about my mistakes, is following on from that perimeter exercise. I presented my group with this task. I thought it was a fun way to be doing perimeter. Each section of the park is coloured. So you'd think that would be quite an easy task to do, and some did cope really well. But goodness me, some found it far too busy. ADHD youngsters, too much colour, and they just couldn't see the perimeter edges at all, even with the colours. So that was a big faux pas on my part, and realised that I had really got it wrong. Another maths task that I got wrong, and I want to share with you, is looking at area. And again, back to assuming sub-skills are in place. So to actually get the children understanding the concept of area, I had my primary 7s colouring in the rows so they could see that their rectangle comprised 4 rows. So the child 1 coloured the whole row in as a single shape. So he did his blue and he moved on to the green. So child 2, though, coloured every box individually. So child 1 finished really quickly. Child 2 became anxious when he saw that the others had finished before him. Teaching focus, model how to colour a whole row. I assumed everybody could do that. And what was interesting about this specific task is I was able to use what we call peer tutoring, because I'd noticed that this youngster on the left had really grasped the quick way to do it. So I asked him if he would teach us all, including me, could you show us all how to do that? You did that so well. So subtly done, you can actually use your students to help each other. So tools for supporting our neurodivergent pupils. I am so passionate about this one. Please, please talk to parents and carers. They know their youngsters far better than we ever will, and you'll know they know their strengths, and they also know about their struggles and their anxieties. And for the older ones, certainly, ask the pupils what they think their strengths and struggles are. It's part of relationship building and understanding what they really are enjoying in life, but what they're struggling with. And another thing I'm really passionate about is please think about a subtle communication system so that when they ask for help, they're not drawing attention to themselves. That can be negotiated between them. And this, for many teachers who've gone through the training, the model guide and leading on to independent work is the traditional model. But please, when you're modeling, break it down into simple steps and then guide the pupils, talk them through it as they're going through the simple steps before you allow them onto that independent work. So the key message here is never assume that sub-skills have been learned early in their learning journey. When modelling, go back to foundation skills before taking them onto their new tasks. Encourage the pupils to explain their strategies when carrying out their task. Their way of carrying out a task can reflect incredible thinking skills. And when you actually start chatting with them, they realise that what they've got are their tools for life. So I want to finish with this. This is another mistake I made with my granddaughter. I said, let's go build a snowman. Now in Mo's head is a head, a body and a base with buttons and twig, carrots, stones for eyes, etc. That's Mo's snowman. And I did this with my then 11-year-old granddaughter. And this is what her snowman and snow dog. And I can't remember what the thing was behind. So never assume that your ideas are the same as theirs and celebrate their creativity.